Even when you think you can't keep going, you can. And that is a state of mind. It's not a state of body.
Hey y'all, welcome back to the Struggle Climbing Show. I'm Ryan, I'm your host. I'm so psyched that you are here today because we're sitting down with Tim Emmett, and Tim was here, local, at the Red River Gorge, my backyard crag, as he was just wrapping up some training before he headed off to the mega proj Aravea out in Spain. And man, this is a hell of a conversation. Tim is just a fantastic rock climber, but he's also fantastic at about everything else that he takes on. And what he takes on are some of the most interesting and, in some regards, risky areas of sport. The guy is a rock climber, ice climber, base jumper, free soloist, deep water soloist, free diver. I mean, he just does so many cool and interesting things outdoors, and he has achieved mastery in many of those. And when you peel back on all of these, it's not really about the physicality. I mean, he is incredibly strong and very focused on training, and that training chapter is really interesting in this conversation here. But when you really look at the common thread, it's the mental game, and it's how he has tapped into his mindset to be able to push his body, his mind, his emotions to quiet them at certain times. Maybe when he's on a really intense free solo or he's doing some free diving, he can quiet the mind, and he talks us through his process there and controls his breathing, or how he uses his mind to push his body beyond what he thought would be possible, like just when he's in his garage doing his training. All of that comes into play here in this conversation as we talk about him at 50 years old, climbing harder than he's ever climbed in his life. And I find that really inspiring as somebody in my 40s, but whether you're in your teens or 20s or 30s, whatever decade you're in right now, I think you're going to draw some inspiration from what Tim is able to do with his training, with his focus, and now as he takes on Aravea, a project that at the time of our conversation here, he had put 88 days into, but he just recently arrived back in Spain and has put a couple more days on that since we talked, and I think he's going to put it down. The guy is close. You'll hear in this conversation, there's some parallels between his journey on Aravea and mine on the Force. I've only put in like 16 days on mine, but it's still the longest running project I've ever had. I fell a few moves from the chains. He fell a few moves from the chains. And so we're drawing some parallels there. Whatever your project is, whatever you're working on, you are absolutely going to draw a lot from this conversation with Tim. And make sure you stick around to the end because he really does uncork some very specific and very interesting aspects of mental game and of breath work to help us be able to push our bodies beyond what we ever thought was possible. So just a quick little mini update from me here as we are now officially getting into the fall season for me here where I'm at in the world, and wherever that is for you. Maybe it's the spring season if you're coming at me from the Southern Hemisphere, but it's the shoulder season. Conditions are arriving and I'm just starting to feel the benefits of all of the training that I've been doing. I took a deload week and then I got outside and I had a quick send of a 12B. It was a second go send, so that's the fastest I've ever sent that grade. And man, it was a fight. It was a 100-foot route called Babyface. I put some stuff on Instagram for it if you care. Anyway, I was just very proud of myself because it was a friggin' fight to the chains. I think I screamed every move for like the last 15 or 20 moves. It was such a battle and I did it and I was psyched, and I think it was a big confidence boost that I needed. I also got back out on the Force on the project for the first time, and I just bolted it, but I was pretty anxious about getting back there because I had had this injury and I almost sent, I don't know, there was a little trauma, a little scar tissue between me and the proj, but I'm happy to report that we're still in love. Me and the proj are still, or at least I still love the proj, and I had a blast. I bolted it. I did all the moves without falling, so that was a confidence booster as well. And I'm just psyched. I'm psyched to be getting outside more often. My goal now that we're in season is to get outside 2 days a week. I have bigger goals, like I have a big goal to send the project. I have another goal to try to flash a 12A. I have some route goals, but kind of the overall goal or the deal that I'm trying to make with myself, with the support of my family, and it definitely takes support, is to get out 2 days a week. So that's typically one day during the week, like a weekday, where I can get out and really focus on the project, and then one time on the weekend where I can get out with the kids. And so I was just out recently with my son, got him on a rope, put up a swing for him, I didn't really climb anything crazy, but I did manage to get a couple burns in. And those days are awesome as well. I don't have much of an agenda. I'm just going out and having fun. So I hope you're going out and having fun, whether it's in the gym or it's out at the crag. Let's dig deep, let's try our best, and let's make it a hell of a season, just like today's guest is doing out in Spain. This is a guy who really knows how to dig deep. Let's get into it right now. I can't wait for you to hear this conversation with Tim Emmett. Dude, you've been here for like 3 days and you've sent more stuff in the red than I have in 7 years. So congratulations.
I really like the climbing here. It's amazing. It's right at my street. You know, as soon as I get on pockets, because I've been training pockets a lot.
Yeah.
They're pretty strong. So it's, and the rock here is really grippy. And coming from Squamish, where it's really technical and little feet and, cracks and things like that, you get here and you just get the holes and start yarding on them. So it's good.
Yeah, they say it's the biggest holds you'll ever fall off of, but for you with the capacity that you've built up, there's probably not a whole lot of falling off of those big holds.
Oh, I don't know about that. I had to go up to Supercharger yesterday and also Thug Life. Both of those are 13D, 14A or something. And I definitely did some falling off there, so yeah.
Yeah, both of those are all time. That whole crag over there, drive-by, is just great. There's from like mid 510 all the way up. There's just fantastic routes at every grade. I was just out there, actually. I was just out last weekend doing some rebolting, and a buddy and I rebolted those first 3 bolts of Supercharger, the boulder problem there. That's Maisie May, kind of like a V6, V7 right off the deck there. So those shiny glue-ins at the base of that climb were from us.
I was wondering who was doing that, and I thought it was an amazing effort. So thank you very much.
How did the rest of Supercharger look? We didn't go up there. There's not a whole lot of people that go up there, actually.
Well, I was having issues getting up to the crux. So there's a tricky move that goes up to a hold, and then you do a big move out left up near the top. A friend of mine, Riley, he went on it and was showing me the score, but he was having problems with that too. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I feel like I injured my left shoulder in June last year, my rotator cuff.
Yeah,
and
I'm aware.
I think it's a little bit under par. Anyway, we'll see. I'm having a day off today. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, you're in the right spot because we got some real powerful climbs or sections of climbs, and then certainly endurance for days. I'm so excited you're out here. It doesn't look like you're in my cabin right now. Where are you?
No, I'm up in Miguel's.
Are you really?
Yeah.
It's so quiet at Miguel's right now.
Yeah, it's awesome. There's only one other person in here at the moment. Well, it's off season. It's middle of the day. I think most people are out climbing. So, yeah, it's great.
Yeah, you kind of arrived in a bit of a warm snap, which might be good, good training for you before going to Spain, as you never know what the weather's going to be like, but pretty warm out there these last couple of days.
Yeah, I'm just making the most of it, right? It is what it is, and I'm really psyched to be here, and I'm trying to sample as many routes as possible. I give them an on-site or flash go, and if I don't do it, but I get really close, I might have another try, and then that's it, so I'll go and try something else after that, because there's so much amazing climbing here, as you know, and when you're only climbing for like 4 or 5 days, I really want to sample some of the wonderful routes, which are legendary, so yeah, I'm definitely coming back here maybe in October, well, not this year, but next year in October or November or something like that. It's, my new favorite crag.
Well, that's definitely the season. The falls are just so beautiful out here. The leaves change and the real crisp temps come in, humidity drops. And well, if you make it over to, we'll see if, hopefully we're able to link up and do some climbing here in a few days. And my project, the big project that I've been working on is over at this crag called the Dark Side. That's just got stellar kind of like mid 12s through upper 13s.
Yeah.
And it's not as steep as like the Madness Cave. So it kind of depends on if you really want like those long pumpy endurance climbings in prep for your trip. Undertow and Madness are probably the place to be. But at like 30 degrees, 25, 30 degrees, much sharper, smaller pockets, kind of monos and 2-finger pockets and just real sustained climbing. Just some unbelievable routes over there. So I spent almost the entirety of last fall over at the Dark Side. I haven't been back. I'm trying to build up some capacity between now and when temperatures get a little bit better. But if you do have an opportunity to go scope it out, there's some great routes to be sampled over there.
Cool. Well, thanks for the tip. I will definitely get there if I get a chance.
Yeah, it's all about finding partners right now, or somebody with a car, I guess, to shuttle you wherever you want to go.
No, I've got it all covered, Like, if I didn't, I'd have a car myself, but because my buddy races here, we're all set. Seems silly to get 2 vehicles when you've got one already, so.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, for some reason, I thought you were getting dropped off at the Red. He's staying out there. You guys are climbing together.
Yeah, totally, yeah.
Okay.
He's living up in New River Gorge, and he came down for a few days. He's gone back up there because he's doing some work, and then he's coming back tomorrow, and then we're climbing until Saturday evening, and then we're going back up to New River Gorge, which is near Chelsea, which is where I got my flight from, and then I will climb up there for a couple of days.
Ah, great. That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so excited for this conversation. I appreciate you taking the time. You got a lot going on, but you're a climber, a human that I've been inspired by, that I really, in many ways, relate to and aspire to. And I've just been so psyched to have this conversation for a long time, Tim. So thank you for taking the time to hang out here.
Well, thanks for the invitation. Yeah, that's great to hear. So I kind of feel like I'm on a bit of a crusade right now. I mean, as you know, I turned 50 this year, and I want to show people that you can still have it when you're 50. You know what I mean? Like,
hell yeah.
One of my big inspirations for older climbers doing hard routes was Stevie Haston. I mean, Stevie Haston, the British guy, he's always been an inspiration for me, because back in the day when I started ice climbing and I was doing the Ice Climbing World Cup and things like that in 2000, he was right in the forefront of the hard ice and mixed climbing arena with Will Gadd and Babu, and he was like, this British guy that was climbing some of the hardest routes in the world. And then Stevie climbed 2 9As, his first 2 9As after he was 50, which I was like, oh my God, that's so rad, And I mean, he did like starve himself, and he said that he was no fun to be with. And they were also local to where he was living, which is always helpful. But yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to eat really clean and train a lot and see if I can pull off like the hardest time in my life, which may or may not happen. We'll find out.
Oh, man. Well, I think climbing is such a beautiful sport in how scalable it is. And I spend every week here talking to elite rock climbers, the best in the world, from, I've talked to Lynn Hill and Peter Croft and Alex Magos and Alex Honnold and Nina Williams. I mean, just, like one banger after another. But I find it relatable because, look, I'm not going to climb 9A. I guess I won't rule it out, but it's not likely at 45 years old that's within reach. I'm projecting my first 13A right now, 7C plus. But, what you're going through on Eravea, trying to climb your hardest grade without building a huge pyramid underneath it at that higher end. If I recall, you're climbing, you've done like an 8C and an 8C plus, and here we are going for a 9A. And that's very similar to me. I did like 112C, 112D, and here I am going for a 13A. So we're on a different level, but we're kind of on the same journey. And that's why I love these conversations so much, because it's relatable, even though it's not the same,
Yeah, I definitely want to be an inspiration to the younger generation. Because, I remember when I was 40, I was a bit worried about being 40, and I just thought, I wonder what this is going to be like. And then I climbed my first 8C, and I climbed my first 8C plus as well, and I became a parent at the same time. So
amazing.
It was like a real, okay, you can become a parent and you can still climb really hard. And that's awesome, And I kind of love that. So whenever people are worrying about whether they're not going to be able to perform at a high level when they get a bit older, I enjoy inspiring them to show them that it can be done, and that makes me feel good. Because, I don't know, I like having an impact on other people and inspiring them to be a better version of themselves if that's what they want to do. So, yeah, it's cool.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm excited to dive in. My show follows a bit of a format, so I'm going to kind of take us through it. But if we go off on some tangents, that's fine. But we'll go through training, nutrition, tactics, mental game. I think we'll probably spend a lot of time on mental game. There's a lot that I want to dive in and peel back on that side. And I also got a lot of listener questions in. So I'll try to be mindful of our time and our pacing here. Let's just kind of dig right into things. And I always open up the conversation here through this lens of struggle, as we are the Struggle Climbing Show. And I'm curious, Tim, what your relationship is with struggle as a climber. How do you experience and how would you define your relationship with struggle?
Yeah, well, I feel like I'm the epitome of struggle because when I was 20 and 30, I used to mainly on-site routes and doing first red point or something. I mean, there was a point where my on-site grade and my red point grade was the same for years. And it's just because I didn't red point anything. And then in my later years, when I got into 40, I started to really put time into harder routes, which I never thought I'd be able to do. And that opened up a whole new world of oh, wow, actually, I could probably do that. And then that inspired me to look into how I can get there in micro detail to see whether it might actually be possible. And I think my journey with Eravea, which started in 2017, I'd been there 6 times and I've still not done it. I've spent 88 days on the route, which is a lot. I've been flying from Canada to Spain, my wife is there's no way you're going back. Because the last time I was there for 7 weeks and I really thought I was going to do it and I didn't. There's a number of reasons for that. But anyway, yeah, it was a bit of a surprise to me, actually. I really genuinely thought I had it in the bag and it just didn't happen. So anyway, I've invested vast amounts of time preparing my body to try and do this one route. And to give you an example, a couple of years after I started trying it, I had a shoulder injury and I took a year off climbing. And then I remember the first time I tried to hang on my arms and take my feet off the ground on some rings at the end of that year. And I remember really carefully taking my feet off the ground and I was squeezing and just really trying to hold my body weight on rings. And it was a big effort. And then I went from there training really hard for 9 months to falling off at the last bolt on Eravea, which is solid X plus,
Unbelievable.
And that really inspired me. And that was I was 47 or 48 or something. And then since then, I've had these other 2 injuries. I broke my shoulders 7 months ago. And that's actually really good. My right shoulder's pretty good. But my left shoulder's taken a while. And I've actually lost quite a lot of muscle. I'm not as bulky as I used to be. Mm-hmm. Because I haven't been doing any powerful climbing really in this year. So anyway, we'll see what happens this time. My fingers are really strong and I've got loads of endurance. So it's just this juggling act basically. But yeah, as far as struggling goes, just to go back to your point, it's been a lot of effort over a very long time, So there you go.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And in some regards, I've been along for the journey because you share quite openly on Instagram these journeys you're going through, not just the highs, the adventures, the fantastic time out on snow or ice or rock and deep water soloing and all the stuff that you're into that I want to peel back on as we get into this conversation, but also the challenges, the struggles, the lows, if you will. And you remain seemingly quite positive through a lot of that, though it certainly isn't all easy. So yeah, I'm curious with the injuries, with the setbacks, with 88 days on project, how have you developed this relationship with struggle and how do you look at it or how do you manage struggle?
So I did quite a lot of public speaking. I've been talking at schools and colleges and universities for the last 25 years. I've also done lots of corporate talks as well. And particularly with kids, there's one of the topics I talk about is the way you view any situation. And it's about choice. And it's about what you think about. Because all of us can choose what you think about. You don't just think about it. You can actually choose what you think about. And I didn't become aware of that for quite a long time. I was like, oh, wow, you can actually choose what to think about. This is interesting. Because, when maybe if you get caught in a bad mood or you get upset or something goes wrong or you feel really negative or something's bad and then if you can acknowledge that you are thinking about something which is making you sad or upset or something like this, well, if you change what you think about, it changes how you feel. So acknowledging that and then maybe focusing on something else is going to change your state. And for sure, you might go back to the thing that's making you feel sad, but you can absolutely choose whether you focus on negative things or if you focus on something more positive, or maybe you focus on something in between. That is like, it's a sliding scale. And for me, I really I try and focus on things that are positive. Like I try and find the good in all the shit stuff that makes you feel awful, right? Because I find that if you dwell on the bad stuff, it just makes you feel, or it's not helping anyone out, basically, especially the self. So I try and lock onto something good in that situation. I try and learn from that. You know, it's like every time I fail, I learn something. And it's like, what are you learning? And what's good about that? Rather than like, oh my God, I haven't done it again. I can't do it. I'm rubbish. I'm too old. I'm not good enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm never going to do it. The conditions are rubbish. I mean, like looking back to last year, well, sorry, not last year, the last time I went there, 2 years ago, back to Arabia, on my third day on the route, I got to the upper crux, which was bolt 17 out, and there's 19 bolts.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, on my third day I'm doing this. I'm going to do it for sure. I've got like 7 weeks. Like, this is game on. And the conditions were amazing, actually. They were like northerly wind, cool, really awesome. And then that changed. It started to warm up. And then a couple of major things happened in the next month of October. And it's one of them is only something that I kind of look back at recently. And that is that I went back to the UK and like buried my mum, because she had died earlier on that year, and I'd spent a month with her and via bed. She had lung cancer and stuff, and I basically spent the last part of the life with her. And it was pretty, it's a pretty full-on, intense experience for anyone sort of saying goodbye to their mum, And anyway, so I was dealing with that, I guess, and that must have had an impact on me in some way. And then also, like, the weather in October was like the hottest October they'd had for years. It was consistently 28 degrees during the day. And trying to climb on a really hard route like this right at your limit when it's those sort of temperatures is just hard. It's really hard. Like, every time you look at your fingers, there's no chalk on them. And you can't chalk up because the holes aren't good enough. So you're keeping going and you're just squeezing super hard.
Right.
And if it was like 10 degrees colder, you might keep the chalk on your fingers to 10 moves, and, it's just way easier, basically. So from that perspective, it was definitely, I used up a lot of time. But I think, again, you're like, well, that's what happened. And there you go. It's like, push on. Like my gran used to say, oh, you just got to get on with it. I think that the key thing for me is finding the positivity in things that you're doing and focusing on those as a constructive way forward to learn, to gain insight, to do better next time, And I'll be absolutely straight up with you. This year, I've got no clue how I'm going to get on the route because I don't really know how well I'm climbing. I haven't even climbed a 514 yet this year. And, I want to do a 14D. And it's like, when you look at the figures, it doesn't look that good. But I have been training very specifically for Arabia. And as I said before, when I get on pockets, I feel really strong. And I know what the holes are like on that route. And I've been training for those holes. So who knows? There's only one way to find out. I've just got to get on the route and see what happens, you know what I mean? And it could be like, oh my God, there's no way I'm going to do it. Or I might be like, oh, actually, this feels pretty good. So, yeah.
Well, I'd love to dive into some of that training if we can right now. We can just geek out over all things training, specificity, which is what you've been focusing on recently for Arabia, but just training in general. You seem to be someone who gets a lot of joy out of training, out of pushing yourself, metrics. I see you keeping track of a lot of things on whiteboards and pads of paper and stuff that you've shared on Instagram. So is there any aspect of training that is a bit of a grind for you or that's a struggle?
No, I just thought I would sit face jeans and drink coffee.
Best answer ever. All right, great. Well then, now that we know the tools that you use to get psyched for a hard training day.
And I've got, I've also got, I don't know if you've seen it, but I've got this glitter light, which is like a strobe. And honestly, the number of times I've been down into my garage and it's either like 6 o'clock in the morning or I'm just don't feel like training at all. I stick on that light, I have a coffee, and then I put on like a techno mix with Richie Horton and I just start doing it. And like, it seems to bring me around. And then even if I might feel heavy or weak or something like that, I can still have an amazing training session and sometimes, set new PBs, new personal bests. One of the things I've learned over the years is that it doesn't really matter how you feel. You can still perform. Your body can still perform at a high level. Sometimes, not always, sometimes you can surprise yourself. So leave space for that. And again, there's only one way to find out. You've got to do it. And if you don't do it, you're not going to go in the direction that you want to go in. So I quite like this binary aspect that you either take action or you take no action. Like you can either train or not. You can make up every excuse under the sun as to why you don't want to train or you shouldn't train or whatever. But you either do it or you don't. And if you don't do it, you're not going to gain anything unless you need to rest because you're really tired. Mm-hmm. But if you're being lazy and then you don't do it, then you're just being lazy. And it's like, for me, I know that there's no space for that at all. Zero. Like, I can't afford to be lazy once. Like, the only way I'm going to get to the top of this route is I've got to just absolutely go for it, hands down, on every front, And that's kind of one of the exciting things about this, because I never thought I'd ever be able to climb this hard. I mean, I've really surprised myself, actually. Like, I never thought I'd climb 8C. And there were days where I'd be like getting up to the upper crux in Aravea like 3 times a day, which is like solid 8C, maybe 8C plus. And then you do that again the next day as well. And you're just getting really fit. And,
Crazy.
You're not quite getting to the top. But anyway, so...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I've been there. I want to talk to you about that because similarly, at the end of last season, I was going from the ground past the last bolt. Actually, 3 moves from the chains is where I kept falling on my project. And I figured it was probably like a 12D plus or a soft 13A that I was doing multiple times a day, but I wasn't clipping the chains. And so there is an interesting psychological thing that happens where, like, I know I'm climbing the best I've ever climbed, but I haven't quite done the thing. And so I'm going to put a pin in that, though, because I want to come back to that, like, in the mental game. I still want to geek out over training for a second here while we're talking through your time in your discotheque garage. And it is like a vibe that you have going in your training setup there. And so coffee's in, coffee's flowing, techno's pumping, the lights are going, you're like locked in, you're ready to go, whether you feel good or not. And I love that point that you just made there. I think that's really important for me to hear, and probably a lot of people who are listening, where sometimes you don't feel great, but then you get into a session and all of a sudden you're like ticking off moves that you never thought you'd be able to do. And I've seen you share some of that. And so I'm curious about your setup. You've got these campus rungs hung with pockets that are in them what appear to be facing the wrong way. Like, it's not the in-cut angle that one has. It's like upside down. How do you hold on to this pockets? And I'm assuming that's specific training for Aravea, but talk me through like what how you're training. How are you training for the hardest thing you've ever climbed?
The campus board is correct. The pockets used to be upside down, but I've changed them. I've flipped them over now. So they've gone down the other way. And the reason for that is because I really want to focus on power endurance and strength. And I find that when the pockets are upside down, because the campus board's at 20 degrees and the pockets are slightly in cut. So when you turn them upside down, the pockets are really slopey. They're like early 35 degrees. So it's really tough to hang on them, which is all good and well. But what I want to do is I want to be able to do big moves, which are very strength and power orientated, and also be able to do them for a long time as well. So, I mean, my training program at the moment, or for the last 3 months, it's been trying to get my fingers back up to where I know they need to be so that the holes feel good on Aravea. And I got pretty close, actually. I thought like 9 out of 10 away from my maximums there a couple of weeks ago when I last did a training session at home.
And what's that based on, just so I have clarity on like how you're measuring your progress? Is it based on like max hangs and kind of typical metrics that we're doing, or laps that you're doing on your specific setup?
Yeah, it's based on max hangs. It's pure strength. So
Got
it's
it.
like, it's a hold, like, so for example, be like these two with 38 pounds in 8 seconds is my record on that. So
On which hold?
the 2-finger pocket on the Beastmaker 2000, the good one on the
I
bottom.
got you. Okay, so you're measuring strength on a variety of holds, a variety of finger. It's not just a half crimp 4-finger. You're testing varieties of grips.
Well, I'm doing all sorts of stuff. So I'm really strong, open-handed. Like on slopers, I'm like great. Crimps, I'm not that good. So to give you an idea, like with my middle 2 fingers on the bottom hold on a Beastmaker 2000 on a 2-finger pocket, the good one, not the slopey one, the good one,
Right.
I can hang at the moment with, I think it's 82 pounds with 2 arms. And I'm not sure what the timing on that is, but it's something like 6 or 7 seconds or something like that. Maybe 10, I don't know, I don't remember. But
With your back two, with your ring finger and
middle
your pinky?
middle two.
Middle two. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, middle 2. Now, if I try and do the same hang, a 90-degree hang with the same 2 fingers, I can hang 20 pounds.
Wow. Check that difference out.
Yeah. And like I can hang open-handed a 3-finger drag on the edge of a Beastmaker 2000 much more easily than I can with 4 fingers and a half crimp. So, but with Eravea, it's also specific to Eravea, you see, but that's what's so interesting is that if I get on a different route that's got like a crimp on it, I'm way weaker than I would be if it was open-handed. And I've also been training my back 3 fingers. So in fact, these two are really strong right now, actually. And I really notice it. If I get a hold like this, I just feel like a locker.
So you're like actually using your pinky on those holds. That's adding some strength for you. So how does that then translate to your training? Because if Eravea, you can climb predominantly open, do you continue to train your superpower, which is clearly like a drag or an open, or do you recognize that there's weakness, if you will, or maybe some room for improvement on a half or full crimp and look to try to train that up?
Yeah, I train both half crimp. I don't train full crimp. I mean, I'll do hangs on the 6 and the 8 mil little crimps in full crimp there, but I do hangs that are open-handed, and then I do 90-degree hangs on these 2 and these 2.
And then what about endurance? And this is something that's specifically I'm most focused on right now because you're in my backyard here in the red. You know how these climbs break down. One can't have too much endurance on the style of climbing that I mostly find myself doing. How are you training up endurance for a 19-bolt climb in your garage?
Yeah, well, I simulate the amount of time I think it's going to take me to get from the bottom to the top, which is about 6.5 minutes. So I've got these 2 protocols that I've been doing, which is something I've never done before. And it's going to be really interesting to see how it works out. So I do repeaters, and one of the sets of repeaters are 12 seconds on, 2 seconds off with my feet on the ground.
God, no, that's no time off.
But my feet are on the ground though.
Okay.
So you put your feet about 1 foot or 2 feet in front of you underneath the hangboard. And you hang on the small holes for 12 seconds, take 2 seconds off, and then you do it again. And there's some pretty wild results that I've been getting, actually. And this is one of the things that gives me hope. So when I started doing these particular repeaters, I was doing 12 on, 2 off, and I'd do 12 sets of those, and that would be it, right? And then I thought, well, I should do more than that because that's only like 2.5 minutes. So I did the same thing, rested for 10 minutes, and then did it again, rested for 10 minutes and did it again. So that would be my initial protocol. I do 3 sets of those. And then the other day, before I came here, I did exactly the same, but with 1 minute rest in between instead of 10 minutes. So I've brought it down from resting for 10 minutes down to 1 minute, and now I do another 12 sets, and I rest for 1 minute and do another 12 sets.
Holy smokes.
So there's like a massive difference there. So I mean, that's over the last 3 months. So I don't know how that's going to affect me when I'm on the route. But the plan is that there's 2 mini shakes on Erevea, and I don't really hang out with them that long. Like the first one, I used to stay there for a minute or two, and now I just don't even bother. I chalk up twice and then just go. And then when I get up to the top shake, which is after the second crux, which I've been up to like 4 times or something, then I do need to shake out a lot. And it's all about getting from there to the top, which isn't very hard. It's probably like, I don't know, 30K or something. But anyway, I'm really trying to train my body to recover very quickly indeed so I can keep going. And it seems to be working. So that's one of the things I've been doing. But the thing about that is it's not very intense because you got your feet on the ground, but then you're not recovering for very long. So the other one that I'm doing as well, which is totally savage, and it's from Christian Core actually, is you do 16 seconds on, 10 seconds off with no feet. And you repeat that. And initially I could only do 6 sets of those. And then I started doing 9 and then 12, and I've got it up to 14. So I can do 14 sets of that, which is 5.5 minutes. And it's savage. It's savage.
Totally. What size edge are you on?
That's on a 15 mil edge on that one.
16 seconds on a 15 mil edge on body weight. And then you take 10 seconds off and you repeat that for 6 sets. Yeah, that is savage. Holy smokes.
14 sets of that. And it's pretty fierce. Yeah.
And then are you looking, as you're doing that, because I know you like to keep track of your PBs and progress, are you looking to add reps, add sets, or just feel better? Is it, less of a perceived exertion? How are you gauging progress when you're doing this kind of workout?
Well, I'm trying to get to 6 minutes, and that's the goal. The 6 minutes is the total duration, and making it as hard as possible to get there, basically. So, for example, if I'm doing the hangs, if I'm doing 12 on, 2 off, I know that's more than 6 minutes. If I just take 1 minute rest, it's 2, 4, 6. It's like, it's 8 in total. But I can't do the 16 on, 10 off for 8 minutes because it's too hard. So anyway, I mean, I've been toying with these different protocols and trying to mix it up. And I think that's a really good thing to do with your training because your body adapts it. Like if you do the same things all the time, I don't think it adapts quite so well. You really got to mix it up. And that's something that my friend Neil Gresham was talking to me about, that you always want to shock the system and add something into it, which you're not expecting. And it helps you to adapt more. So.
Well, really cool advice, and also just inspiring to see that you're able to train for really long, pumpy, overhung sport routes by doing hangs, by putting your feet underneath you a little bit and simulating a bit of an angle, but, keeping feet on and trying these different repeaters. I think, again, while I won't be able to approach the numbers that you're doing, I have a hangboard. I have a few campus rungs in my basement. I can play around with some of this stuff. It doesn't always have to be out on route. It doesn't always have to be on an auto belay or in the gym, which is hard for me to get to as a parent with 2 kids and a couple jobs. So it's really inspiring to see the training that you've been able to do. And I will point everybody to your Instagram because you put up some great stuff there and also mega inspiring stuff. Last question on the training here, and I'm sure we'll loop back into some of this as we go on and continue to dissect Erevea and some of the other things that you've done. But noting your age of 50, and I'm in my mid 40s, and I don't feel like I'm 20 anymore, although I am climbing a lot harder than I was even 10 years ago. But I feel like I do require a bit more rest, a bit more recovery, a bit more deload. And I'm curious how you look at rest and deload as a part of your programming.
Yeah, I mean, resting is absolutely crucial for me. Like, I need to rest more than I think. Like, for example, one of the training protocols that I was doing was applying for 3 days on and then take 3 days off and then feel really good. Really, really good. I mean, on this trip, I would love to have 2 days off right now to like really get involved, but it's a training trip and it doesn't really matter whether I send stuff or not. I just want to get out there and have fun and do as much as I can, and I can rest when I get home. But yeah, I definitely find having 2 days rest is a game changer for me. And I know that a lot of the younger lads and women as well, they don't rest very much. Like they might find a day is great for them. Or even like, if you look at Jorge, for example, I mean, he doesn't rest at all, but he's very young. He's like, 22, 23 now. So he put a comment on his Instagram the other day again, I rest when I sleep, which is totally...
That's the mentality of a younger climber who can go up to Flat Anger and do some hard stuff and then bounce right back down and do some stuff in Sayus. Or, Alex Magos used to be that way now, but I had a conversation with him recently where now he really does appreciate it. I think with age comes wisdom and also the real appreciation for some rest. And so on your Red Point days, like will be coming up here on Aravea, how many days are you looking to have of complete rest before you go put in a burn?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Ideally 2. But the thing is, if I have 1 day on the route and I have 2 days off, then I don't get enough climbing in. So I have to climb at least 2 days on, So I think that the sweet spot is 2 days on, 1 day off, 1 day on, at least 1 day off, or maybe 2, and then you have another go. But it's a tricky one, actually, that. Because in the past, I've done really well on my 3rd day on, actually. Like, even if I feel tired, I've managed to get some really good results doing 3 days on. So,
no kidding.
Yeah, it's...
Wow, that is a long route. That's a lot of climbing to do 3 days on. How many goes are you able to do in a day? A couple? 2, 3?
Well, it depends. Like, usually when I get there, I'll do 2 goes and I'm absolutely destroyed. But then I've definitely been in shape so that I've done 3 goes a day, 3 days in a row. And like maybe the 3rd go on the 3rd day, I'm a bit tired. But like, it's really interesting. It's one of those routes where if you feel strong, it doesn't feel that hard. It's just pumpy. But if you're not really strong, then it feels desperate. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, like when I first started trying it, it was just so hard. The first time I tried Aravea, the first few weeks, it was absolutely desperate. And I thought, there's no way I'm ever going to do this. Like, I couldn't get to the crux or anything. It was just really hard. And then I went home and trained and went back the next year and it was way easier. And then I went back the year after that and I felt really good. And I thought, I can totally do this. And then ever since then, I've thought the same thing too. So it's really interesting how your body can adapt. Like, I was looking at all the videos that I could of people climbing it, and I just remember looking at everyone doing it, and they made it look so easy, and I felt like it was so desperate. And then when I looked at videos of me nearly doing it, I looked like them, So I've managed to get, kind of transform myself into one of these other people or into someone that looks like that anyway. And that's really inspiring for me because it's like, wow, that's cool. You can actually do that with your body, make it work. You can make it do things that it can't do up until this point.
This episode is supported by PhysiVantage Nutrition, and I've been using PhysiVantage since long before there was ever even a podcast. I've been a paying customer for many years now. It tastes the best, and it does the best for me and supporting my goals in my training, my recovery, and my performance. As a rock climber, I'm sure you all are familiar with their products. Their athlete team is crazy, from Alex Magos to Jonathan Segrist, Amity Worm to Daniel Woods, and so many other crushers out there are using PhysiVantage regularly. And that's because it works. I use their supercharged collagen every day before I train my fingers or I go climbing. I use their vegan Powerplex protein, which tastes incredible. The chocolate flavored protein that PhysiVantage makes is just crazy. That's like my sweet treat that I have at the end of every day. I'll either mix it up with some water or milk, or I'll mix a scoop in with my plain Greek yogurt, and it tastes like chocolate pudding. It is so, so good. And then recently, because I've been trying to build up that endurance for my long, pumpy climbs out here at the Red, I've been using a lot of their Sendurex, which is like a beetroot extract. It's highly concentrated. It is science-backed to help support the endurance system. And I'm feeling like I'm climbing longer and harder and also recovering faster when I'm using PhysiVantage products. So I think you're going to love it too. If you haven't tried it, you can get 15% off your order over at PhysiVantage.com using code STRUGGLE15. If you're looking to level up your training, your recovery, and your performance, I have really felt the difference using this stuff for the past few years. And I think you will too. Check it all out at PhysiVantage.com and use code STRUGGLE15 to get that discount. Let's talk about shoes for a second here, because this episode is supported by SCARPA, and they just make the absolute best shoes in the game. Oh my gosh, I love them so much. I have been climbing in SCARPAs for a decade now, and I just love the way that they fit and they perform on rock and also at the gym. I've been loving the Instincts, the VSs and the VSRs on my project out at the Red, because they can toe into those little pockets and stand on edges so well. They heel hook like a dream. And then in the gym, as I've been climbing on the Moonboard and the gym set problems, I've been using their Veloce Ls, the lace-ups. They're soft. Oh my gosh, you can just feel everything. They're super dynamic. I feel really athletic in them. So look, whether you're a weekend warrior like me, who's just trying to get the most out of my time at the gym and out on the crag, or a pro like Sean Rabitou or Nina Williams, Nathaniel Coleman, Alex Puccio, Jordan Cannon, or Matty Hong, holy smokes, what a team. SCARPA's got you covered. They've been sustainably making the best dang footwear for climbers, trail runners, and skiers since 1938. I love my approach shoes. I love my climbing shoes. And I think you will too. Give them a shot. You can shop the whole collection over at scarpa.com. SCARPA, no place too far. Nutrition is incredibly important. I'm sure you're quite focused on making sure you're not only fueling your training and your recovery, but also making sure that you're kind of an ideal composition for what you need for the route. You transformed your body. And I've seen photos of you in Spain. You're like holding like a warm-up hangboard, like an electric guitar, and basically just, looking like a Marvel superhero. And nutrition, especially when you're putting your body through that much training rigor, as well as red point rigor out on the route in Spain, you probably think a lot more about this than I do. So yeah, talk me through your nutrition game a little bit. What is fueling this crazy transformation?
Training is fueling the transformation. And then, it's a really interesting one, this. Like that picture that you were talking about of me holding the hangboard, I remember seeing that going, oh my God, what is that? I've never looked like that in my life. And
right.
Climbing on Eravea turns you into a machine. It does. When you climb on that route for like months at a time, you just change. And training for a route like that, it really does get you in pretty good shape.
Yeah, no doubt.
You're using a lot of core tension, and it's very endurance orientated, and it's powerful too. There's some big moves, and it's really steep. But from a food perspective, I generally eat whole foods. I eat meat and I eat fish. And over the last few years, I've generally tried to move away from things that are cakes, like kind of fun stuff, while I'm training for it, because I'm like, well, I've got to be really light. But this year it's a little bit different, because I went to and I'm not sure this is the smartest move, but I went to Mount Waddington with my friend Will Stanhope a few weeks ago, and then we did this new route which took us 52 hours with no bivy gear or sleeping bags or anything like that. And
epic.
When I got home, I was like 7 pounds lighter than I was when I left a week earlier. I was really skinny. And I'm like, holy smokes. I'm like, there's nothing to me, So at the moment, I just had a muffin earlier on, which it's good because I can still eat muffins. But I'm focusing, I had a big salad for lunch, and, I'm having my protein shakes as well. And I'm eating, I'm adding quite a lot of powders to my diet at the moment. When I say my diet, I should really say, what I'm eating, because I'm not on a diet as such. Right. I'm definitely not calorie restricting in any way, because I'm really light anyway. So the peak of my shape for Eravea, I was 148 pounds and I was really light. That's like really light for me. And when I got back I'm normally about 155, 160. When I got back from this trip to Mount Waddington, I was 149. But I was a totally different body composition to what I was like when I got back from Spain. I was like, rah, like this. And I was more like a, chicken. Anyway, what I'm eating on a daily basis at the moment is anything that's whole food, like salads, vegetables, fruit, things like that. And also like me really going for that, trying to eat a bit more protein than usual. I normally have smoothies in the morning, which has got a mixture of oats, water, like a protein mix as well, like with loads of plants in it as well. So I think getting lots of plants is definitely the way forward. And then I also add some peptides and some collagen. I think collagen is a really good thing to have for me at this age. And actually, my body feels pretty good. I mean, I've still got my left shoulder's still a little bit funky, but anyway, that's work in progress. But everything else feels great, and I'm not drinking any alcohol at all. I'm drinking non-alcoholic beers, actually, which is quite fun. But yeah, not many of those. And drinking lots of water. Also taking, what is it? It's a supplement that was recommended to me a couple of years ago from a chap who works for Blonix. And it's
creatine, beta-alanine.
No, beta-alanine, yeah. No, creatine doesn't really work for me. It just makes me really heavy and I get pumped. I tried that once and I was really strong, but I just got the pump of death, you know. Like I just get so pumped, I couldn't do anything. So I don't take creatine. But yeah, beta-alanine, I've been taking that for the last 3 weeks. And I'm wondering...
How's that been? I'm just about to go on a cycle of that myself. It was recommended to me through a medical doctor that I climb with, who's also a crusher. He's a 8C plus climber out at the Red, but he's a doctor and a dad. And anyway, I just did an episode with him on supplementation, and he recommended beta-alanine with regard to, I guess the way that it works is it can kind of keep the pump at bay, but it might make your skin a little tingly when you start taking it. I'm about to start it next week, so you can let me know. How's it feel for you?
Yeah, so it can make your skin tingly, and it does feel weird, especially if you haven't experienced it before. But the way around that is just take less, and then you don't get it at all. It's really interesting, actually. There's a very definitive amount with me where if I have half of one of these scoops, it recommends you have a whole scoop twice a day. But if I just have half of one, then I don't notice the tingly bits at all. So yeah, so I'll put it in my water bottle and drink it throughout the day, and then I don't get the tingles, so to speak. They are a bit strange.
Yeah. Well, at least the way he described it, the way that it's worked for him, or at least some of the studies that have been done, is that you kind of load the system over time, but after about a month or 6 weeks, then it's in there and it's available in the muscles for the benefits. So you're probably starting to maybe realize some of the effects now, but maybe even more so in a few weeks.
Yeah, well, that's the plan, because I knew it was going to take a month of consistency to really activate the buffering system for it, or that's what it sounds like from tests that have been done in the past, because it acts as a buffer to lactate, you see. So yeah, I don't know, it seems to be working. I mean, if you look at my results with my hangboard, doing the 12 on, 2 off and doing 12 sets of those and having a 10-minute rest and then bringing that down to 1 minute. But another thing that I do when I'm doing those hangs though sometimes is I swap fingers. That makes a big difference. I do that on Ayurveda as well. When I'm shaking out on a 2-finger pocket on Ayurveda, I'll swap fingers, and it really helps.
Check that out. Yeah, you'll flip between like front 2 and back 2. So it's just giving a little bit of a rest, like a little mini shake for each finger.
Absolutely, yeah. And what else can I say about with food is, it's a really interesting one, actually. Like, doing some work with SCARPA at the moment with the mentoring initiative, and we had a talk by Amy Bourne, and she's a nutritionist and a dietitian, and she was saying that the one thing that you need to activate your recovery process after climbing is carbohydrate, which, I don't know, it almost seems like there's 2 different types of dietitians. There's the ones that talk about carbohydrate, and there's the ones that talk about protein. And they're both qualified, but they just say different things. So it depends who you talk to. It's quite fascinating, actually. It's definitely a conundrum, this. It's something that I'd love to get at the bottom of. I mean, you talk to someone like Dave McLeod, for example. He's got a degree in nutrition now, as well as many other things too. And he is absolutely bent over on protein and low carbs, and ketosis and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it is interesting. I've had conversations with both Amity and Dave, and I think at least from the conversations I've had, they're both very pro-protein, but one is pro-carbs and one is not. And I think, and I'm not an expert on this, but based on the conversations that I've had, I think Dave's school, like the ketogenic school, can work, but can be quite hard to make work. You have to be incredibly disciplined. And for some people, it just makes them feel really bad for a while. Whereas for maybe real people like me who have lives and kids and, we're going to eat family meals together and that kind of thing, it's a little harder for me to try to have a very restrictive diet. And so I also really love pastries. So maybe I'm just wagging the dog here, but I definitely maybe fall more into the Amity camp where it's a lot of protein, but also carbohydrates seem to be beneficial for the glycogen in the muscles. And, not about carbo loading per se, but again, not my area of expertise, but you're sitting at Miguel's right now, and I love me a slice of Miguel's pizza. So I guess I'm pro carb is what I'm saying.
When I get to Spain and I'm in sending mode, what I really enjoy doing is eating steaks actually the night before with like some vegetables with low carbs. I sleep really well after I've eaten a steak, and I just feel really good. And I know that you get a lot of amino acids in meat, and they're the building blocks to help you recover. So I like to eat a lot of salad and green veg and eat some steaks and just simmer down on the carbs. And I've also noticed too that if you don't eat a lot of carbs the night before, you're actually pretty light the next day because you've used up a lot of the glycogen in your body. It's actually something I got off Dave McLeod many years ago. It was this thing called glycogen dumping, where the day before you're going to try and send something, you stop eating early, and then you use up all the glycogen in your muscles that you don't need, basically. And then the next day, because glycogen requires, I think is it 3 parts water for every 1 part glycogen, or it might be 6 parts water to every 1 part glycogen, I'm not sure. The fact is, the more glycogen you've got in your body, the more water your body stores so that it can metabolize it. And as a result, if you don't have any glycogen in your body, or you've got a limited supply of glycogen in your body, then you have less water. So you can actually lose a couple of pounds at night just by not having lots of glycogen. And I know it might not seem like much, but it's kind of a healthy way of getting light rather than doing some gnarly diet or not eating enough food. And it was really interesting because like 2 years ago, Angelo and we tried Aravea with a weight vest on. And it was only 5 pounds, but the difference between trying to climb it with 5 pounds and nothing was huge. It was huge. It was possible to climb it, but it was just like absolutely all out effort, whereas without the 5 pounds, it was, it was okay. So on something as steep as that, these micro gains that you can get from what you eat or how much you eat the night before can make a little bit of a difference. And it's all about, for me, it's about that 1%. Like I only need 1% from somewhere and I'll get to the top. It's no more than that for sure. So I really need to I need to get into the shape that I was in when I was doing really well on it. And I think pretty close to that. So, but we'll see.
This gives us a good opportunity here to shift, and I want to talk about tactics now and technique too. This chapter kind of focuses on both or either, and tactically speaking, at least, you've spent quite a bit of time on the project, as you said, 88 days. I've spent quite a bit of time on my project, not quite as much. I think it's like 15 or 16 days, but for me, that's a lot because I don't get out there all that much, and it's the longest project I've had, at least to date. And for me, I just kept blowing it right. I don't even want to say blowing it. That's not fair. I climbed the best season I've ever climbed in my life and got within a few moves of the chains, but didn't quite do it. And similarly for you, you've gotten very close up past the second crux. And I'm curious, tactically speaking, what you've learned. If you've made any missteps in those 88 days, you think, and how you tackled the project, or what you'll implement tactically going into this next trip there so that you can address, whatever's happening between kind of where you're coming off and the chains. And I'm curious for me as well, because I haven't quite figured out what my new strategy is going to be.
Well, I think there's 3 things that I could talk about that I've noticed so far on this journey. One of them, which is more specific for long routes, which are kind of endurance-based, where you maybe falling off where you are or where I am because you're getting tired. I think a really good way of working routes like that is actually from the top down. So, and that's something I started doing on Aravea last time I was there, So rather than trying to do it from the bottom all the time, I would lower, I'd go down to a point and then try and go from there to the top. And then I'd come down to the next bolt and go from there to the top. And then I'd come down to the next bolt and go from there to the top. And what that does is it makes you incredibly familiar with the top of the route, which is the section where you're going to fall off, basically. So if you're really in tune with that and subtleties of that, and you're used to climbing that section, I think that increases the chances of being able to do it. Whereas if you're always doing it from the bottom, you get really good at climbing the bottom, and that's not where you're tired. So I think there's like a reverse psychology thing there.
How low have you gone on that? Like, have you implemented that? Like, how far down the route did you make it?
Well, I've done it from the 10th move up to the top twice.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But the first 10 moves are like probably like 13C.
Yeah.
You know, it's like doing a V8 bold problem, something like that.
Yeah, it puts it on you.
Yeah.
But I like that because then, you know, to your point there, you can feel fairly automatic towards the top. So even if you're flamed, even if your mind is racing or whatever, you've dialed in the top enough where hopefully it's your body is bringing you to the chains and it doesn't take a whole lot of thought or work. And I do think that's a very solid plan for me this year. Now that I know the route well, having projected it last year, doing some of that, like from the top down, low pointing, I think could be really good. But you mentioned a couple other tactics there that I'm curious on.
Yeah, the other thing I was going to say about that too is that it's crucial when you get near the top, especially if it's the first time you've got there, that you've got to focus on the move that you're on and not the fact that you're nearly at the top. As soon as you start thinking about the fact you're nearly at the top and you're going to do it, you're probably going to fall off. Or, you know, because you're not focusing on what you're doing, you're focusing on getting to the top. And the way of getting to the top is to get the next hold, not the fact that you're going to get to the top. Do you see what I mean? Like, you've got to stay really laser sharp focused when you get to that new high point. And I think we've all been there where you get really close and you're just like, oh, wow, I'm going to do it. And then you fall off. So I think it's crucial that you focus on the hold that you've got in your hand and then each foot. And then you really concentrate on that hold, and then you get the next hold and you focus on that hold and get your feet in the right place. And then you focus on the next hold, bang, and you get that one. Like, keep your blinkers on, you know? Because as soon as you're like, oh, I'm going to do it, like, then you're really going to throw everything out the pram. So the other two things I was going to talk about, apart from working from the top down, is taking 2 days off before a good go. You know, like if you do like 2 hard days on and then you take 2 days off, on the third day, I think you're in really, really good shape. You know, you're fully recovered. But
and do you take a rest before taking the trip? Sorry to interject there, but like you're in a hard training mode right now. Do you do a rest or a deload before heading out there?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. The last week before I go out there, I'll simmer down a lot. Yeah. I mean, I'll still do the same intensity, but I'll do way less volume.
Okay, that makes sense.
I think it's good to do that every 3 or 4 weeks anyway. And it gives your body a chance to like reload and recover. And the other one is, it doesn't matter how you feel. Don't try and predict the future. Like, if you're thinking about, I'm going to do it, then you're not thinking about the timing. So you want to focus on the move you're on, and that is it. Like, don't think about, oh, I'm feeling good, I'm going to do it today or something like that. Try and all of the thoughts, the talk that's in your mind, the chatter, switch it off and focus on the climbing. And a great way to do that is to, every time you get a hold, feel the rock and how the hold feels under each fingertip. Like really make sure you've got the hold the best way you can. And then set your feet and then get the next one. Focus on your breathing. Because when you're thinking about whether you're going to do it or not, or how you're feeling and all that sort of stuff, it just distracts you from what you're doing. And really the best way of getting to the top is to focus on the move that you're on only.
What about this? I'm curious about this tactic that I think you've employed on occasion about closing your eyes while doing a hard move or a hard sequence.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I've only done that once. So, I mean, I'll shut my eyes on 2 occasions. Like the one time I did shut my eyes, on a climb while I was doing the crux, when I was doing Meshuggah, the fourth ascent of that in the Peak District. And the reason why I shut my eyes is so that I could concentrate on 3 different parts of my body. So I shut my eyes and I knew that I had to pull down like this and then do that with my left arm. And then my knee was in this scoop, so I'd push over as far as I could with my knee. And then the third thing I'd do is I'd just push with my left foot. And if I did those 3 things with my eyes shut, then if I opened my eyes and I reached up, I'd be able to reach the hold. And it worked, and it allowed me to really focus on each part of my body rather than the holds that I'm trying to get to. Because if I focus on my body, it'll allow me to get the hold. But the other time I shut my eyes when I'm climbing, which is quite rare, but I do it sometimes, is if I'm in a situation where I'm scared or I need to focus, and I do this thing that I call a reset, where I'll shut my eyes and then open them, and then I'll go. And it's like, I think you have 11 million sensations in your eyes. And I think in your whole body, with everything, all the senses that you can receive, there's about 13 million of them. So a huge percentage, like over 80% of your sensations are from your eyes. So if you shut your eyes, you're shutting off a lot of stimulation. And if you think about climbing, it's really about your body and moving and getting the next hold. So I don't shut my eyes when I'm doing hard moves, apart from that one instance on Meshuggah.
I found that just so fascinating. I think I had heard that in a conversation that you had with Hazel Finlay, who's been on the show a couple times here, and I just love her stuff. The mental aspect of climbing is just the most interesting and exciting for me. And when I heard that, it just really struck me that you could be in a crux of a hard climb with very high stakes. I thought it was a free solo, but you're saying, I guess it's one of those like high E ratings where like essentially you've got a rope on, but you're going to deck if you come off.
Yeah. There wasn't any gear. I didn't have any gear in it at all.
Oh, there's no gear. just a rope, just because it looked good.
Yeah, it's because you can get a cam in after the hard climbing, and then that protects you to the top. So,
got it. But yeah, that really struck me, closing your eyes to be able to really feel your body. And I think, it could just be an interesting thing to play around with on a top rope, or just, while working moves, is just to, I've never done that. I'm going to go to the gym tomorrow, I think, and try it on an auto belay, but just get familiar with a sequence and then try to close my eyes and just kind of feel where my body's at in space. And to your point, if it shuts off the 11 million points of information coming in, so you can focus on the couple million that are usually quieted by the eyes, I just find that really fascinating. But you're not doing that on Aravea.
No, I'm doing that. I might do that on a shake. I don't do it on a move, apart from Meshuggah. That's the only time I've ever done it on a move. But to throw something else into the mix, I freedive, and when all of the deepest freedives I've done with my eyes closed.
Wow.
The reason for that is because you've got a line going down and you've got your hand on the line, so you know the line's there, and you actually attach the line with a tether so that you can't go off the bottom of it. But if I close my eyes when I'm freediving, it really enables me to focus on what I'm doing with my mouth and my glottis and my soft palate, because all of those components there, what allow you to equalize as you're going down into the depths. And there's very subtle things that you can do with your tongue, different tongue positions, which allow you to equalize at different depths under different amounts of pressure. But being able to control those is very challenging for an intermediate freediver, So if I shut my eyes, I can really concentrate on moving those specific parts of my body. So that's something that I do a lot in freediving, and it works really well, actually. So I find that it's definitely worth doing when you're climbing too, but particularly if you get in a situation where you're overstimulated. And when I coach people, like, this is one of the things that I talk to them about when if they do get overstimulated, is to shut your eyes, take a big deep breath, and then open your eyes again, and it gives you a chance to refresh and retune and go. It's quite a good technique for falling off, actually. If you're afraid of falling, you don't want to fall off. If you close your eyes, take a deep breath and open them again, you're ready, or you can be. It's quite a good tool for that.
Quick question for you, climber friend. What's the first thing you do when you fall off of a climb? Whether you're at the gym or you're outside, you fall and you look at your hands, right? You look at your hands and you say, why have you failed me, hands? And you take a look at your skin and you say, come on, skin, can you give me one more go? Well, the answer is yes. If you are using Rhino Skin Solutions, I'm so psyched to be partnered with Rhino. I've been using Rhino forever. As a climber, it's made by climbers for your adventures. And what do I use? Well, I use their performance cream every night before I go to bed. It soothes and strengthens my skin. And then when I'm in season and I really want to keep my skin very dry so that I can keep a hold on those tiny little holds on my project, I'm going to use their dry spray. So that keeps my skin from sweating as much. And then after I get off of a climb and I'm done for the day at the gym or out at the crag, I clean my hands really well. I use their cleanse spray, which doesn't require any other water. So if I'm out in the woods, I can just clean my hands real quick out at the crag. And then I'm immediately putting that repair cream on to get my skin back to health after drying it out so much with all that chalk all day. Look, whether you climb a lot in the gym on the plastic holds or you climb a lot outside, taking care of your skin is going to not only help you to be able to put in more quality sessions, but also it might be the difference in whether you send or not. So take care of that skin and take care of your wallet, because Rhino's going to give you 20% off just for being a Struggle listener. If you go to thestruggleclimbingshow.com/Rhino, that code will be preloaded to give you 20% off, or just use code STRUGGLE at checkout over at rhinoskinsolutions.com. Let's go. Man, I'm just so into this conversation. I knew I would be, and here we are. I'm so into it. We've touched on some mindset and some mental game stuff there just kind of at the end of the tactics conversation. I'd like to continue to expand on that now. I think that you're one of the most mentally tough and trained athletes that I've ever had on the show here. And when we're talking about climbing and fear of falling or being gripped or fears of failure, things that I've, certainly struggled with myself, as well as just trying to optimize ourselves, put ourselves in the right space to feel light and strong and confident and also have joy. Most of us, myself included, and most people listening, don't pay the bills with rock climbing. We go out there and we want to push ourselves, but we also want it to be a positive, joyful experience. So when we talk about mental game and you look back at all the ways that you've pushed your mind, and that can include climbing, ice climbing, deep water soloing, free soloing, base jumping. I mean, you've really, I think, explored the outer reaches of the mental game and controlling the body through the mind. What comes to mind? I mean, what tactics and what tools have you used that you feel stand out?
I think something that's just popped up into my mind right now is probably one of the most challenging situations I've ever been in was free diving next to an iceberg in a pair of shorts. Yeah, that was pretty intense, actually. Yeah.
Okay, so now you have to set the stage for this. How did you find yourself free diving next to an iceberg in a pair of shorts?
So I was invited to go to Greenland to assist with making a short film about mental health. And I was the safety guy for climbing and iceberg climbing and things like that. So in case anyone wanted to get onto an iceberg and jump off it, or we wanted to film you on iceberg, I was that guy just to make sure that it was all okay. And then I was also free diving as well. So I was acting as safety for free diving. And we had a few other excellent free divers as well. But the main guy the whole point of this film was to show the similarities between free diving in a pair of shorts in ice cold water and men's mental health, like where the tip of the iceberg is only a tiny thing that you can see, and most of the iceberg's actually under the water. And the point being that if you were to, imagine like men might think that they've got, they're really tough and they don't really want to talk about mental health issues, even though there's like a bigger thing going on underneath, like the big iceberg that we've talked about. But the analogy is that if you embrace that and you take it straight on i.e. jumping into the water in a pair of shorts because you're really scared about doing it because you know it's going to be really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But if you embrace it and go, tackle it straight on, so to speak, that's really where the breakthrough happens. So it was all about going freediving in a pair of shorts and the journey of that discovery. So I was watching all this going on and I was just like, you know what? I've done some cold water swimming and I've done a load of freediving and I just want to know. I want to know what that experience is like. And I went swimming in the water, which was, I think it was minus 0.5 degrees centigrade at the time because it's saline. It can actually be a little bit colder than zero without freezing.
Colder than freezing.
But then, so I was sitting on a paddleboard and I had the safety crew around me and I just jumped off the paddleboard and just started swimming down, vertically, doing breaststroke. And this iceberg was right next to me. And I instantly had, the ice cream headache. But it was quite surreal because I kept going because I wanted to get down to like 8 meters or 10 meters or something. And I knew that I had the right safety crew, a really amazing team of people around me to look after me if something happened. So that was very comforting as well. But it was pretty intense. It was pretty intense, like swimming down to the bottom of the ocean when you're being stimulated by this freezing cold water and you're holding your breath going away from the surface as well. So
how are you then processing that or handling that? You mentioned on typical free dives where you're not in shorts in freezing water, but you're closing your eyes and you're able to focus on the sensations and the tactics that you need to do in order to keep equalized in this kind of thing. When you're in that situation and all of this like danger stimulus is probably like all the alarms in your body are probably going off after a couple million years of evolutionary, psychology where you're not supposed to be in that situation. How are you then handling that so that you can keep going?
I'm accepting it. I'm accepting the feelings that I'm receiving. And I think that's anyone that's been cold water swimming, it's all about accepting those feelings that are uncomfortable and going with it rather than resisting against it. And I think it's similar with any extreme environment, actually, is like learning to embrace where you are and work with it rather than working against it, which I think most people might have the tendency to do, whether it's surfing big waves or freediving or base jumping, wingsuit flying, climbing gnarly reefs with like poor gear, free soloing, ice climbing. I mean, health and falls, like there's just so many different examples I can give you of being in situations where either people have never done it before, no one's ever been there, or you don't know whether you can do it. And that's one of the things that's really fueled my journey in life, is to experience these things that you just don't know what they're like until you embrace them and take them on firsthand. So I think it's being comfortable with the uncomfortable, like when you get into really cold water, you've got two options. You can you walk in and it gets really cold and it starts hurting a lot. And you can either turn around and be like, oh my God, I can't do it. And you get out straight away. Or you can focus on your breathing and accept the feeling that you're getting. And you're like, I've got this. I can do it. It's okay. And then you go through into the next world, I suppose, the world of acceptance.
Can that translate, or does it for you translate to being en route and maybe you're pumped out of your mind and that pain is coming in? Can you disassociate as you would in a cold water plunge and be able to continue past where your mind says, no, you must stop?
That's a great question. And there's two ways I can answer that. What's really, really interesting is one of the reasons why I'm doing those 16 on, 10 seconds off footless hangs is that you can keep going. Even when you think you can't keep going, you can. And that is a state of mind. It's not a state of body. And I think by doing those, you can train yourself to, when you get that feeling, that pump where you're just like, oh, I'm so pumped, I can't hang on anymore. you're like, yeah, I can. I've totally got this. And it's the other thing I was going to say is that it's really interesting. I've taught my son to switch off his tickle spots. Like he's got this tickle spot on his back, which like you can just push it like that and then he'll just be like, blah. But he can totally switch it off as well. So
How about that?
yeah, it's pretty cool. And I taught him to do that when he was, I think, like 8. And it really caught me out because he did it one day and I was just like, hang on a second. Like, what? You've just turned it off. Whoa, that's really interesting, you know? And so he now knows that he's got control of himself. Yeah, it's really fascinating, actually.
That's so fast. Well, my son's 9 and I love tickling him. So I don't think I'm going to teach him that because I don't want that power away from me. But yeah, how fascinating. I mean, the power of the mind is really incredible. And it does. I had a conversation with Tommy Caldwell and, you know, one of the things that stood out the most from his experience in being abducted in Kyrgyzstan was essentially his body was pushed past the point where he ever thought it could be pushed. And he kept going and he kept climbing. And so when he came back and pushed himself on climbing, he just knew there was just like a new reserve. He was like, oh, there's levels that I've unlocked, you know, and you don't know it until you do it. But to be able to gradually push yourself there can open up this whole world. And you're saying, hey, you can keep going even when you think you can't. And this brings to mind a post that you did recently that I'd love to get a little more clarity on. And that's with these speed push-ups and, you know, doing an ungodly number of essentially push-ups, but I think you said in your post, like, but you can always do one more. And so, yeah, I'm curious, A, what those things are and if it has any benefit physically or if this is just a mental exercise and what you've learned from doing that.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating journey, actually. So it all kind of originated many years ago. I was climbing with a chap called Steve Townsend. And I remember that he said to me, he's like, I always climb better when I can do loads of push-ups like this, like as fast as you can. Now, what's happened over the years is that my memory has changed very slightly. So the story that I remembered is that there are actually these like tiny little push-ups. And he said to us, like, yeah, but I never did little push-ups like that. They were full push-ups where I put my chin on the floor. And I'm not sure that's true, actually. But anyway.
That's a big move. That's a lot of range of motion.
Yeah. But like the point is you're doing really fast push-ups. And the difference between these speed push-ups and normal push-ups are that like doing proper push-ups is actually quite difficult unless you're very good at them. And if you do a really, proper push-up, maybe you can do what, like 10, 20, 30, who knows? But you probably can't do 50. Whereas the things with these speed push-ups is that they're really small. So you basically have your arms out like this and you just engage your shoulders and then straighten in. So you hardly bend your arms at all.
So your arms are almost entirely straight. It's more like a scapular push-up or something like.
Yeah, you might bend your arms maybe like 15, 20 degrees at the most.
Got it.
And the really interesting thing about this, well, it does 2 things. Number 1 is it promotes blood flow in your arms, like for sure. Like if you do it every single day or every other day, like every time you do it, you do a little bit more than you did before. So the big thing for me is I wanted to stabilize my shoulders. And because my shoulders initially were really weak, my physio was like, yeah, you want to do these like really small push-ups? And I thought, perfect, I'll just do those speed push-ups that I've been doing. And then I kind of kept going. And going back to what you were saying, it was getting to the point where I was doing like 450, which might sound crazy, but
that's nuts.
They're really small. And as I said before, is that you can always do one more. And I didn't realize this until one day where I was just like, hang on a minute, I'm going to test this out. But when I get to the point where I think I can't do any more, I'm going to do what I do with cold water immersion, and I'm going to embrace the feeling. And I'm going to say to myself, I really like that feeling. This is a great feeling. I've got it. I enjoy that feeling. This is so good. And I'm just going to keep going. And I totally did. And I did like an extra 50. So when I got to the point where I thought I couldn't do any more, I did like another 50. And that was a breakthrough for me. It was like, oh, wow, that's interesting. Like, imagine if you could do that on a climb. Like where you think you're really pumped and you can't keep going. can you flip that switch and just be like, I've got this, and you just keep going?
Oh, I hope so. I hope so for you in Aravea and for me out here at the Red, man. I mean, that's really cool. I just, again, as a way to just explore our minds and our bodies, these are not hard things for people to try. Yeah, everybody can do these little scapular kind of speed push-ups. Most people have access to cold water, whether it's in a bathtub with a bag of ice or a cold shower or a running river. These are things that we can try to hopefully build some mental strength and mental clarity that we can then take to our routes. It's something I'm really hyped on. Tim, I appreciate you sharing all of that. The last thing I want to ask you about here in this mental game chapter, then we'll start to wrap things up for you so you can focus on your own recovery for tomorrow. But I want to talk about routes and projects that we're working on, because you and I have a bit of a parallel here. You have famously been projecting Aravea for quite some time now and have been very open about the process. I've been very open about projecting my route, the Force, as the hardest thing I've tried to take on. And I've done podcasts on it, and I talk about it on Instagram. And, for the most part, the support from the community has been great. I really like the group Stoke. But every once in a while, I'm like, oh, man, why did I float this out there? And a lot of pro climbers don't, for various reasons, don't talk about the things they're working on until they're maybe done working on them. So I'm curious from your point of view, what the experience has been like having this public projecting of Aravea, and anything you may have learned that could help me or others, people who announce the thing they want to do. There are some benefits that come with that, and also maybe some challenges. So what's it been like for you?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I don't know. I feel like it's a journey, and I'm taking people on the journey. And because I'm a really honest, straight up person anyway, like I'm totally happy to just say it how it is. And if things don't work out, then that's just part of it, right? I think sometimes we have a tendency we want to look good. So if you wait until you've done something, then you're going to look good because you've done it. Whereas if you expose yourself to the journey, like to potentially failing or doing it, then you're being more vulnerable. And I think some people might not like that, because they want to be like, yeah, I'm really good.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, we all like to look good, right? I think all of it, I don't know, maybe some people don't, but I think that if you do something that you're really psyched about and people commend you for it, it makes you feel good, and, you like to get some gratitude and all that sort of thing. And I think that if you only say what you've done, then you can be sure that you've got a better chance of getting that. But when you put it all out on the table, you're like, well, here's what I'm thinking of doing. Let's see what happens. I feel like it's a human experiment. And a lot of my life is like that. I've done my homework on my preparation and stuff like this. And it's like, well, here we are. I'd like to do this. Let's see what happens next. And it's kind of like life, I think. It opens up the ending because you just don't know. And you don't know what's going to happen to you guys. You can't predict the future. But I think it's kind of fun, like putting it all out there on the table and people can see what you're doing. So it would be really tough for me to go back to Aravea and not say anything about it, actually. Because I know that a lot of people have really enjoyed the journey and they are itching for it to continue. And some people might look at this as an experiment going, well, are you only doing it for the public? Or what's your reasoning for being open like that? And I just I don't know, man, Instagram and social media is all about, what we get up to in our daily lives. And for me, it's a big deal to try and do this route, it's a human experiment, is to see whether I can climb the street before I get too old and I can't do it anymore. That's the question, right? Because I know I can do it. I can definitely do it. But I've got to be in the shape that I was before to be able to stand a chance of doing it. And I think the question is whether I can get into that shape. And it's kind of exciting because you just don't know. And I think it's fun to just put it out there and not really worry too much about whether you do it or not. It's like, if you don't do it, then so what? It's just another chapter in your life, and it's part of the journey, isn't it? Like, what can you learn from that? And if you do it, it'd be amazing.
Oh man, beautifully shared there. I really appreciate that perspective. And I'm glad that you're doing it. I'm glad that you're sharing it, because I'm really loving the journey, dude.
Thank you. Can I just say one other thing? And I think this is really, really, really important. And this might apply to a lot of people, is that what we do in our lives as individuals might seem really important to us. But when you look at the bigger picture, it doesn't really matter. It really doesn't. Whether I climb Hervé or not doesn't give, it's not even a hard route, but to me, it's a big deal because I've invested a lot of time into it, and I'm very curious to see whether I can make all the transformations necessary to get there. But really and truly, it only matters as much as I think it does. And that's it. It doesn't really matter. It really doesn't. But it matters to me if I think it matters to me. But I don't have to think that it matters to me, It's like, it's only as important as you think it is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very subjective, and it's very personal. And you can apply that with anything in your life. Anything. A lot of the times, I think humans make dramas out of things that really aren't a big deal at all, And it's, as a dad, being a parent, it's been fascinating trying to get learning points across to my son in a way where it's like not dramatic. So especially in situations of danger. So for example, if him and I were we're walking up to the top of the chief and he was like, Dad, I really want to stand on the edge. Some parents might be like, don't get away from the edge. Do not do that. You can't do that. It's really dangerous. Stop. You can't do it. And I'm like, okay, so you want to stand next to the edge. How can we do this safely? So with Rocco, like I use words to talk about severity, like danger and severity and things like that. But I try not to use, and I try not to shout at him like ever. I'll turn around and say, hey, Rocco, that's really not cool. You can't do that. That's just not acceptable. Rather than like, no, you can't do that. That's just not acceptable. Because it's like, well, what is that teaching him? It's teaching him so that when he's in that situation, he's just going to get all like this, right? And I think that humans are really good at being dramatic about things, and they make it into a big deal. And I think that sometimes it's much better to accept what's happening and be like, okay, it's not ideal. What can we do here to make the situation better? And like try and keep the drama out of it and focus on the best way to move forward. And in my life, the most dangerous things that I've done, whether it's base jumping, wingsuit flying, gnarly ice streets, any situation where it gets really severe and serious, like freediving, like 100% of the time, apart from in an emergency, the absolute best thing to do is to stay calm. And as soon as you lose your cool, you kind of lose your ability to look after the situation. So if you can keep the emotions and drama out and really focus on okay, what can we do right now to make this the best thing that we can?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate that. And, to your point on the things that matter to us likely don't matter to most people out there, especially when we're talking about our climbing goals. How much does Hervé mean to you right now?
I want to know what it's going to feel like to clip the chains. And I want to try and do that in my life. If I genuinely think that I can do it, I'll keep trying until I get there. And if at some point I realize that I'm not going to be able to do that, I tried, So I'm just going to give it my absolute best. And I've dreamt about clipping the chains on Hervé. I've visualized it twice, actually. When I belayed Angelo and he climbed the route, I just burst into tears. I had no clue why that happened, I've got some ideas about it, but I never thought, I just didn't even think for a minute that would ever happen. and it hit me like a steam train, you know, when he clipped the chains. I was like a sobbing mess. I was so incredibly excited for him. But
you'd been working on it together for years, right?
Yeah, we started working at the same time, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember, I think you posted a video, I believe, of right after he did send it, of you know, carrying all that emotion for him.
Yeah, it really caught me out. So anyway, so there's something going on down there that's like quite a big deal. And I want to know what it'll be like to clip the chains. I want to have that experience. I want that to be part of my life. So I'll keep trying until that happens.
All right, that wraps things up with Tim Emmett, a guy whose positivity, whose optimism, whose stoke is just so incredibly infectious. Man, I just feel so good after having a conversation with him, after listening to that. I hope you do as well. Let's get out there and just have a freaking blast. Let's see what our bodies are capable of. Let's see what our minds are capable of. And let's just experience this sport that we all love so much to its absolute fullest. Tim, thank you so much for joining the show, for sharing your insights. And man, we are all pulling for you out there on Eravea. Give it hell, my dude. Now, if you want a double hit of that Tim Emmett stoke and you want some more insights, we talked for a while longer, another half hour, for a bonus episode that's available to patrons and Apple subscribers. And man, he dropped some like really cool knowledge in this one. Let me give you a little overview of what he covered. He talked about breathing techniques that he uses to recover faster and feel less pumped on rests on his hardest routes. This is really cool. He said it works for him every time. It's like a certain way he breathes when he gets to a rest. And he says when he's done with that, the pump is gone. I'm going to be trying that because I get pretty dang pumped on my route. He talks about base jumping versus free soloing and what's more dangerous. Oh my God, how about both of them? But he talks through the nuances of those. Exercises that he does when he only has a very limited time to exercise. So he told me about this thing that he does called 10 minutes of fury. Oh my God, you guys, it's crazy. But I tried it a couple of days ago. I only had like 20 minutes in my day. It was between like work calls. I did 10 minutes of fury. I thought I was going to die, but then I felt amazing for the rest of the day. I got like an entire workout in 10 minutes. So he talks through that. He answers a bunch of listener questions. Oh, and he also shares this trick that he does with himself. I don't know if it's a trick. He calls it a trick, I think, but it's basically like a technique thing that he uses with himself and when he coaches rock climbers on how to take weight off of your fingers on steep climbs. Basically how to climb more efficiently, use less energy when you're climbing on steep stuff, whether it's boulders or it's routes. And it's like a little thing. It's like a little thing that you can change with the way that you use your feet and your body that will help you get up steeper stuff more efficiently. So that's something I'm putting to use right now as well, both at the gym while I'm training and out on the rock. And he covers a bunch of other stuff. It's a really, really good bonus conversation here with Tim. You can get instant access to all of that right now at zero cost, actually, with a free trial over at patreon.com/The Struggle Climbing Show, or right there in your Apple Podcast player if you are an iPhone person. And you're also going to get instant access to more than 60 hours of other bonus content featuring the best of the best. Adam Ondra, Chris Sharma, Nina Williams, Alex Honnold, and so many more athletes and coaches that have been on the show here. Plus, pro clinics on stronger fingers with Dr. Tyler Nelson, advanced bouldering with Allison Vest, moonboard with Ravioli Biceps, performance hacks with Hazel Finley, and so many more. It's all there for just a few bucks a month, or actually zero cost right now with that free trial, so you can try it before you buy it. Although, honestly, your support as patrons and subscribers is really what helps to keep this thing going. So if you got a few bucks, I certainly would appreciate your help as I'm jamming away here in the podcast/utility closet. Thank you. I love you. Big thanks and appreciation to all of our show sponsors who have brought you this episode here at zero cost. Way to go. You can check your show notes for links and special discounts from those guys that are only available to Struggle listeners. And there's some great discounts there, so check them all out. Actually, you can see all of the show's brand sponsors and special deals by popping over to thestruggleclimbingshow.com/deals. Hey, did you know that the struggle is carbon neutral in partnership with the Honnold Foundation? Well, you do now, and it feels pretty good for me to write that check every month. They're doing such amazing work to bring clean energy to communities around the world. Y'all can get inspired and learn more about their amazing work over at honnoldfoundation.org and toss them some love if you can. They're doing awesome stuff. And lastly, The Struggle is a proud member of the Plugtone Audio Collective, a diverse group of the best, most impactful podcasts in the outdoor industry. The show is produced and hosted by me, Ryan Devlin, and edited by the wonderful Glen Walker. All right, that clips the anchors on this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in and supporting the show. If you want to do something that helps me out for zero cost, you could rate and review the show wherever you listen, or just share this with one of your climbing friends or the gym that you climb at. It really helps to get the word out there. I appreciate it. I hope your training and climbing are going great, and if you are struggling like me, well, just remember the struggle makes us stronger.